Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Random Talk of the Night. Tonight's episode is on Paranormal, and I'm joined here with Luke.
Glad to be here.
Josh.
Hello.
And my co-host, Dylan Kennedy.
Thank you for having me.
And I am AJ Eaton, your host. So, guys, we are talking about paranormal experiences?
Paranormal, I think we're just talking about paranormal stuff.
Okay. Does anyone have any...
Where do you start?
Yeah.
Any personal experiences?
Yeah.
Well, I honestly would like to say, like, we could just go around and say, what is...
Okay.
Do you have any... One, do you believe in it? And two, do you have any personal
Where do you
experiences
stand?
with it?
Where do you stand? Yeah.
I know Josh was speaking the other night about he had a few experiences. Would you like to start off with maybe early...
I could start
memory?
off with one of them if you'd like me to. So I used to live in a old house that we had rented for I think about 3 years. No, actually, it's probably about 5 years, but at the time felt a lot longer when I was there. It's definitely was easily said it was very haunted. It just, you'd constantly have knockings on the door. And now I was quite young at that time, so it was very sometimes left out of the loop of things that was happening. But I do remember quite a bit of things that have happened there. Mainly one actually would be nightmares. I mean...
That's what I'm interested in right
Yes.
there. I want to hear about the nightmares.
So, nightmare-wise, one of the interesting things about them was certain family members would all have very similar ones. Like, for example, one of my nightmares that I remember being decently recurring was a type of mirror world. For example, my nightmare, I remember walking on the ceiling.
What?
Was it like a lucid dream?
It was decently lucid.
Wow.
The one in particular that I am thinking of is the nightmare where I murdered my family.
Oh.
Ho-ho.
Now,
Whoa.
I would like to say this, too.
Let's pump the brakes for a
In
second.
all honesty, let me just say this. I was 7 years old, and I loved my family.
You were 7 years old when you had that dream?
I was a kid. There was, in my
God.
conception
Josh, do you
of this
still have a family?
I do. Good question.
Would you be willing to call one of them right now?
I sure can.
I'm just
No.
kidding. I'm just kidding.
Was this a
reoccurring?
Do what?
Have you ever told them about it?
Oh, yes.
really?
I did tell
Okay.
them after
What
a
were
while.
their reactions?
Yeah.
It's the thing. It was pretty shocked because my problem was when I was, I think, like at the time when I had that nightmare, I was kind of hysterical and delirious when I came out of it.
I can imagine.
Because I think I was just sobbing and I was saying to my mom, "I'm sorry I broke the band," and it was constantly a recurring joke because Joshua just said, "Oh, I'm sorry I broke your band," but they were all playing music at the time and we were kind of a big
You're-
band.
Oh, I see.
Oh,
Kind of
wow.
Yoko Ono.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So that's a nightmare, one of the main nightmares, because what on earth would be the reason for a 7-year-old to be having a nightmare like that?
That is
Josh-
bonkers.
I never really had a night. I never. When I'm saying I murdered it, I did not necessarily have visions of blood and things like that.
Sure,
But I knew
sure.
what I did
You
in
knew
the
the
dream.
Right.
Was this a
That's-
reoccurring dream?
No, it wasn't. It was
Okay.
pretty much a one-time event.
Okay.
Wow.
So what makes you think that's a paranormal? Just because of how young and naive?
It's not necessarily that. There are other weird dreams, because in that said dream I was in the mirror world. I was on the ceiling when people were dying.
This sounds like something out of like a Neil Gaiman novel.
Yeah.
Do you know who Neil Gaiman
I
is?
don't think I do, actually.
Oh, he's great.
I find your story interesting,
Mhm.
and I'm going to always side on the skeptic. That's an unusual dream,
Mhm.
but what does that have to do with paranormal itself?
Well, that would be more so related to the rest of the things that happened on the house itself and on the property.
Property.
Another one I will say before we maybe go around the circle really quick would be, for example, my sister was she was been like she probably would have been 12 or 10 maybe. No, she would have probably been about 10 or under.
Okay.
So she was outside and she saw something. She saw this white large thing. And so she went to my mom and was like, "I saw this like massive white thing walking through our yard." And my mom was like, "Well, maybe it was just like a white deer." Okay, so yeah, it's probably just a white deer. Do deer stand on two legs?
Nope. Nope.
So there's just a mixture of things like that would happen. And not included to that would be constant knocking on the door, nobody being there, and I never realized it was not normal for me to be afraid of the dark until I moved out of that house. It was scary in the dark. So, like, it was car, a small driveway, front porch.
Blackness.
You ran to that front porch.
Oh my god, I can. Wow. That is like, that's giving me shivers.
So, Josh, you have many siblings.
I have 2 sisters and 1 brother.
Have they all experienced?
Yes.
All of them.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Including my mom.
Okay. Like your whole family. So, wow.
We all have stories and things, and I have written down some of them to mention
And when
later.
you moved out, it all stopped?
Pretty much, yes.
Wow. Yeah,
I mean, like, when we
little...
moved out, the main thing that was shocking to us is that, like, I think it was soon after we had moved out. It's actually interesting, because I've just thought of this memory. It was probably a year after we moved out. We were moving our chicken coop that we had made out to the new house, and we just had the floorboard at the moment. And there was a meteor shower that night, so we just took a bunch of blankets and laid down on the empty floorboard and watched a meteor shower. It was really amazing. It's actually interesting thinking about it
That
again.
sounds really nice.
Because it was in pitch black.
Right.
And I wasn't afraid of the dark.
You had a good view of the stars.
So your experiences, are they ghosts per se, or are they just paranormal, strange vibes coming?
And that is
out?
the thing. So there is certain ghost activities I can include in that too.
Right.
A lot of ghosts in that house is what I'd like to call an impression, which is a concept of something that was so visually strong to that person, of something they did, that it's kind of just left there in the house. Now, that's not necessarily an
energy.
It's a type of energy of that's remained there. Something, for example, would be we would see this woman tending a fire that was no longer a fireplace there.
Do what now?
Ooh.
There'd be a woman tending a fire that was just a wall.
In your house.
I'm imagining
and you
what
would
that
see
looks
that
like.
during the day, not during a dream.
So there was no fireplace there either?
There was no fireplace anymore. There used to be.
There used to be a fireplace there. Wow.
So let's, before I keep going, because I have more, let's go around the table.
Dylan?
Okay. What are we going around the table?
I'd like to know, one, what do you necessarily believe in about it? And have you had any personal experiences with it?
I've had 2 that honestly are very unexplainable, and the more I think about, the more like the more, I don't know, I feel like I start to understand them more in a sense.
Go for it, buddy.
Go for it. We're all ears. The topic is paranormal.
I'm sitting at home. It's like 3 a.m, and AJ's like calling me, and he's like, "Bro, I can't sleep." I'm like, me neither. And he's like, "You want to go for a golf cart ride?" So I'm like, "All right, yeah, let's do this. Let's go for a golf cart ride." He comes, he picks me up. He texts me. He's like, "I'm on my way." So I go outside. I'm putting my shoes on, and as I'm putting my shoes on, I'm looking down at the ground. I see like a figure like appear like in my peripheral vision, and it was very clearly like a woman. Like a larger sized woman. She was like in a nightgown or something, and I looked at, like, I saw her in my in my peripheral vision. I'm looking down, and then I hear her like let out a yelp, and I see her like get startled. And I think like maybe I had somehow startled her, like she didn't see me, and then she's turning and looking at me, and it's freaking her out. Well, it freaked me out, and when I turned to go look at her, it was like she had just vanished. And it was like where we were was like very open, so I was like, "There's no way this woman got like far enough away from me that I couldn't see her anymore, like in a matter of seconds." So that was pretty freaky and pretty unexplainable. I fall more on like the spectrum scale though. Like I have more of a fascination with like paranormal type things. Like I just so badly want to hear like everything I could hear about people's like experiences with it. I have like this obsession with it. It's almost like I want to believe, but there's just not enough like evidence out there to me that I feel like I have been like convinced that, oh, this is like a real thing. But I don't know. It's just so many people. If it's not, there's got to be something to it. They've been talking about it.
I'd love to interject there because what you're saying there, it's very true. In my opinion, you should, even though I've lived and I do believe in haunted ghosts and paranormal activities, I do believe you should be skeptical in all areas.
Sure.
I mean, I just from personal things and things you read online too. For example, here's a story. There was a family that thought their boy was possessed. He was hearing voices in his head. He was able to recite things that these voices were saying.
I've heard this story.
And he was just kept hearing them over and over again, and they did not know what was happening. And his braces were picking up the ham radio signal from the guy upstairs. It was a completely not.
Is this
paranormal.
someone you knew, or
no?
just
This was
in the
not
news?
somebody I knew. This was just something that happened to somebody.
And he was hearing
Because the ham radio
Right.
signal is so strong, because a ham radio is a lot stronger than a normal radio.
Right.
It was picking it up in the metal.
Wow.
So he was hearing it in his head because it was
That
coming
made
from
me
his
go
teeth.
crazy.
So exactly, it's not. There's a lot of times
Wow.
There's a unknown logical explanation.
A lot of times there is a logical explanation of why something can be happening. The biggest thing about paranormal, in my opinion, of exactly what you were saying, is you want to believe it, you want to see it, is I think the research concept that they tried to approach with paranormal was wrong. For example, like the old paranormal researcher, parapsychology, that's the actual name of it. They tried to define it as a science. Now, the problem with that is science needs to be consistent. Science is you make one, you have point A, point B, you do something in between. They always have to have the same result. You can't do that with parapsychology. It's supposedly by their concept, everything is going to be different no matter what every time, and thus it's not a science.
Right.
So they shot themselves in the foot.
Right. There's also I feel like to me there's a big spirituality to a lot of people who are like very
Yes.
into paranormal things, where these people believe. Like, did you guys see that documentary on Netflix called Jim and Andy?
I have not.
Okay, I don't want to go into it, but
Andy Kaufman.
it's Jim Carrey is like going on and it's talking about how the ghost of Andy Kaufman like practically possessed his body, and like Andy Kaufman was like living through Jim Carrey. It's like people take this very like spiritual side approach to it. And that's the part where I kind of like, I'm like, I don't know what's going on anymore. It's like, it's almost as if like a lot of the things I hear start making up their own rules as it like keeps going along. So it's like, yeah, it's weird. I'm skeptical, but I'm still fascinated.
I'm gonna add to that. I'm
Yeah,
coming from.
Let's might as well give your opinion of everything.
Okay. Starting with my opinion, I'm very skeptical. I've never believed in ghosts. I've never seen ghosts. I'm probably more inclined to believe something paranormal or spiritual in nature a little bit more than a ghost, but I put them all in that same category of something I don't really believe in unless I see it personally. I live in a house that was built in the late 1800s, and a lot of people have told me that it was haunted before they lived in my house. I've had no experiences. One time when I was in junior high school, I was so frustrated with friends I had, peers that were into ghosts, that I went into my attic and said, if there is a ghost or entity, anything here, come haunt me. And I just welcomed.
Yeah, please come possess me.
I welcomed.
This will just clear up everything with my friends. Please.
I welcomed it, and nothing happened.
Why do you think the spirit would have interacted with you if there was something?
Yeah,
there?
why would they be listening to me?
Why would it care if it was just, so to say, an
Yeah.
impression of a person just that
For
lives to
me,
live in that house?
It comes from a non-religious, I wouldn't even say atheist, or I wouldn't say agnostic, just not participating in a religion background, that I believe humans, have a lifespan and that's it. There's nothing after that. So why would there be a ghost and energy?
Understand
Yeah.
But I can go ahead and wait and save these stories later, or I can go into them. I have a few where it is maybe an energy in an area, but I never felt like it was exactly paranormal. Should I give those examples?
the
Well,
floor.
please give
All
us
right.
examples.
I have two examples. My grandmother lived in a small town, and a few hours from here, and her house always had, it was old brick, large house, and it always had this a little bit of a weird vibe to it. I was also young when I visited there, and she lived alone, and my family would come for Thanksgiving dinner and things. And when I was alone in this old house with many rooms, I always kind of felt a bit of an energy, but I never felt like a ghost or anything. So one interesting thing about her house was when they were doing some remodeling, they found a tunnel that left from her house under the street into a building that was a church, an old church. And they think probably it was during the Prohibition times or something like that they were using that tunnel. But they bricked up the tunnel, and then as a young kid, I always went in her basement, and people would show me this is where a secret tunnel that you could walk under the road to a church was. And that always scared me a lot because I didn't know who was doing that and why.
That is very spooky to hear as a kid. Like, why is there a secret tunnel behind the wall? Like,
Yeah.
The infinite possibilities a secret tunnel could be used for. I mean,
And my other short one was I went to an area that had a cemetery, and I went to an area where I was walking through the snow in the bottom of a woods, and it was an area where there had been an incident of a car wreck, so kind of a teenage tragedy, and several people had died there. And I walked through that area, and I don't know if it's because I knew the history or if I was just feeling this energy, but whatever it was, I could definitely feel that area of the woods was different from the rest of the woods. But I feel like that could have just been in my head because I was going in with that idea.
The biggest thing about concepts of paranormal and things like that is really what is coincidence and what is not.
Right.
Because that's like going back to the story of the boy hearing the ham radio, coincidence. But when do so many coincidences and things just kind of pile up? Why is it that you can go in some houses that are pitch black and not feel scared, and the same in another house and being terrified?
Yeah, that's really
I recently read a book by someone who studies paranormal activity in a town area where we live, or around where we live.
I'm very familiar.
And I didn't find anything in the book that convinced me, because it was mostly people saying I got to work one day and a shelf had fallen over, or just very simple things.
I know which book you're talking about too. My sister had read it, and as my two sisters who adore reading parapsychology books,
Right. It's fascinating.
They find it very fascinating. I think they called that book really silly.
Yeah. I did a lot of skimming of that book, but it did have some interesting like oral history of events, but I was never convinced that any of them were ghosts or paranormal.
I don't know. Yeah, as far as like the area of which we live in, there's a lot of paranormal, aspects of the town. A lot of people say, "Ooh, it's haunted," and that's where I think the fascination of like paranormal kind of things kind of sparked my interest, was just living around here and hearing everyone's stories. But sometimes you hear these ghost stories that are just like so weird and intimate and personal to like everything that happens, that it's like more of like you're thinking about it more than whether you're thinking about, is this fake or not? And then sometimes you get these people and they're like, I saw a ghost once, and you're like, oh, let's hear it. And they're like, one time I was laying in bed, and then like the door kind of moved a little bit, and then like I swear there was like a person that I saw like walking, and I was so freaked out. I rolled over and I closed my eyes and I went to bed, but I'm pretty sure it was a ghost. And I'm just like,
and that is exactly why I say you need to be skeptical,
right.
because
that's
there's so much stuff where you're just like, okay, I think you're overreacting.
Yeah, like I'm so
and like, it's not like I'm not going to believe you, but I still think you're overreacting.
I think the concept of ghost is what kind of gets me the most. There's like so many different kinds of ghost stories, and yet some fall like there's almost like categories to them almost. And
so
it's interesting.
Anything else? Otherwise, I think
I feel like there are a lot of charlatans. There are a lot of snake oil salesmen in the game of paranormal events, and if someone's making money off of this, that's one of the main things I look at.
Yes.
Have you ever been to New Orleans?
I have.
Everywhere,
the French Quarter.
These beads keep evil spirits away from you.
And that's voodoo right
Put
there.
Put this lotion on your hands, and it keeps negative spirits away from you. This is like a spirit. This is a ghost in a rock. It's a haunted rock. Keep it in your pocket for good luck. It's like, what?
There's a lot.
Who's buying this crap?
Yeah, exactly. There's a lot of spiritual readers and people that try to talk the spirits through you, and deceased people that think of literally Ghost the movie, where it's just like you have the person that literally is just lying through her teeth to the guests, and clients to say,
Yes.
"Oh yes, I'm definitely hearing something," and really it's just making a quick money.
There's another thing when people, I have beef with people claiming that they can contact the dead, like people who say they have the psychic ability to, and they go on to like TV and they have these big events, and people, they're like, you in the audience, like think of a loved one, and they're like, oh, you have an Uncle Bob, and they're like, yeah, I've got an Uncle Bob. Oh, and I'm assuming he is dead. Yeah, but that's him. He's dead. He said, oh, okay, and he's also a man. Oh my God, that's him. It's like,
Yes, and that's exactly
it's
close
like-
to what I was leading to too. I mean, there's a lot of people out there that are just like it's such a catchphrase to get people into. Oh wow, look how serious this is. Look,
Yeah.
I can tell your future.
I also just hate seeing people like feel like they've had this connection with like a loved one that's passed away. Like these people who are like, I'm getting closure from my dead father for years, and this guy has helped me get closure. When this
Through
guy's
tarot cards.
yeah, and this guy's doing
Yeah.
nothing. It's like an old parlors trick.
So have any of you done a seance before?
Never.
No, I personally do. If I do believe in spirits, and I
Right.
personally do not, unless you're necessarily spiritually trained, like such as like Catholic, not Catholic priests, would be more like Buddhism and things like that. In dealing with something like that,
Mm-hmm.
if something did come,
Right.
I
You don't want to welcome
You
it.
shouldn't be inviting it.
You shouldn't be inviting it.
That's actually personally why I don't like Ouija boards.
Yeah, I've never messed with that. I had some friends that did a seance, and it never really went anywhere.
I wanted to talk about Ouija boards tonight and see if anyone has ever had any experiences with
I've never used one. But first, let me ask AJ first. Where you stand, and do you have any experiences
The
with
floor
this?
is yours, AJ.
Okay, so I've never experienced anything paranormal, but I've experienced weird. I have weird dreams.
Mhm.
And,
Okay, yeah, I'd love to go into this
Yeah,
tonight too, if we can.
Yeah, I have very, very weird dreams. Luke hates listening to dreams. I think they're fascinating, but so I have sleeping paralysis, and that's pretty much the closest thing I can say I have to paranormal. It's weird. It started as a thing where I would just wake up, feel cold, I feel shocked, can't move a single part of my body, and it's just really creepy because in your mind, for some reason you feel as if there is something in that room with you. So years passed, and I kind of gotten used to it, and then it started becoming where I was feeling something touch me. And there were times where I would be laying down and I felt something grab my legs and kind of like pull me off my pillow. And when I finally was able to move again, I was in fact off my pillow. Because you're awake when you have sleeping paralysis, you are awake. You're not asleep.
Tell him what you said once you snapped out of it.
I said, fuck off. But I was so out of it.
Mhm.
Like I couldn't even move my mouth. So it was probably more of like, it was like I was just screaming for this thing to leave me alone. But other than that, there's just a lot of weird things. There was one time I thought I wrestled this air, like this just body of air. There's blood on my curtains and what I was looking at. But it's weird because you're awake, but like your mind's like messing with you.
Mhm.
So
It's interesting because you're talking practically about the bending together of sleep, dreams, and reality, where your brain is not sure which one's which.
yeah. Now, when I was really little, this is probably the weirdest thing I've ever experienced. I don't know if it was just like I have no idea why I did this, but I was laying down and I sat up and I just had this rush of energy. Like I just had to, like I was just going to take off for some reason, like just fly through the hallway. And like I was freaking out, shaking. And for some reason, I just thought I was just going to I can't even explain, just shoot. And it was so terrifying, But I've never had like paranormal stuff. It's always been like weird dreams and weird feelings of what been.
All right.
Hey, what? Speaking of so we have a historic town that we live in, and Luke was talking about the book. He was the book is published here in our town, and it's about our town.
It's about
So
paranormal experiences in this town.
Okay, so with it being historic, this town is kind of
Yeah.
I mean, you would feel like there would be.
If
But,
I was a believer,
200
it would be a good
200
Yeah.
years old. I mean, there's
Yeah.
bound to be a couple of them.
Is it? I thought it was older than 200. Is it only two? Oh, it
No,
is only
we
200,
just
yeah.
celebrated 200
Oh, yeah,
years.
You're right, bicentennial.
Like 3 years
Anyway.
ago.
So,
2 years
explain the story of you and our friend when you were driving in the car and saw.
Oh, yeah. I'm sorry. I forgot about that one earlier.
This isn't much of like ghost or anything. It's more of like just weird.
This is weird. This is very weird. So there's this kind of like, I guess it's people have known about it for a while. I didn't hear about it until after I had an experience. The town we live in, there's like a spirit or like an entity. I don't know what you'd want to call it. There's been multiple sightings of like the same thing. And myself included, I've seen it. They call it Slim. Okay. And I guess like this whole like weird Slim like mythology that's developed in New Harmony, like someone's recently written like a play about it. Like someone's like had such a crazy experience and like has read so much about it and talked to people about it that he's written a play based off of Slim. But anyway, it was like a rainy, kind of like a misty, rainy September night. And me and my friend, we were just cruising around town. You know, it was like Wednesday, 7:30, just cruising for no good reason. And I'm fuddling with the radio, and she's talking, she's saying something, and then all of a sudden she just stops and she goes, "Is that a person I'm looking at?" And that kind of freaked me out, because when she said, "Is that a person?" my first reaction was I was going to look up and be like, "Yes, that is a person." But instead, it was, I looked up and said, "What the fuck is that?" Because this thing, it was like person shaped. Like it had arms and legs, but its like body was what was weird. It had like no neck. It was like kind of tall, unrecognizable face. Like unrecognizable face. Couldn't see a face. It was weird.
This sounds like Slender Man.
That's what I
I know,
said.
that's the thing.
Yeah, that's what
The
I
Isn't
more-
said.
there a movie about that now?
Well, Slender Man
They
was
are
originally
doing
a creepypasta.
Yeah, and
Right.
now there's a film coming out.
No, it's already out. It's
So,
bombed
do you think
out.
this is an urban legend that you saw? A real thing?
Well, so me and Shelby at the time had no fucking idea what we had seen. All right. We were like, thought we were going insane. And we tried looking at it. Like I tried staring at it as long as I could just to like fucking remember it. And, we went back. We didn't even go halfway like down the block before we were like, we got to turn around and sneak like get another look at this thing. As soon as we turned around, not even a minute later, not even like 30 seconds later, of course it's gone. Nowhere to be seen. We're like freaking out, like, oh my Jesus Christ, we just saw something of another realm. I don't even know what to say.
So, would you use the word alien?
I don't know what I'd say, man. It's so hard to say.
There are the Greys, the tall,
Multiple people-
slim
see,
aliens.
We didn't hear about this whole Slim stuff until like we were talking to another friend of ours, and he was like, "Oh yeah, I saw this thing," and he had seen it. It was on the same street we had seen it on. Only he said it like ran past him, and that's what freaked me out. Because when we drove by it, when we saw it, when we were driving, it was just like looking right at us, and like we kind of like cruised right next to it, and it just like stayed on us the whole time. So our friend said he saw something. The way he described it was very similar to what we had seen, how I just described it. And he said it ran past him like really fast. And
And then
When you initially saw this figure you refer to as Slim,
we didn't know what it was at the time.
you had no previous knowledge of this.
No.
That's what makes it even crazier.
Yeah.
I could see your friends telling
Mhm.
you, and then
Uh-huh.
at night,
And then see
then
your
seeing
brain
it,
making it up.
your brain making
Yeah.
it up, but filling in the gaps. But with you
Mhm.
and no previous knowledge of it,
No, we had no idea what had just happened. We were both literally freaking out. Like, and then my brother one day, this was this was like a week later. My brother one day, it was like
Without you even telling.
yeah,
about
I
this.
never talked to Britt. Like I came home and I didn't say anything about what I had seen because I was just freaked out, you know. Like a week later, my brother, he's like, "Hey, I'm gonna order pizza from the local pizza place here." And I'm like, "Cool, you know, get me a pizza too, you know, whatever." So I gets, you know, orders the pizzas. He leaves, and he's gone for like, you know, it only usually would take him like 15, maybe 20 minutes in total to go there and back, like from, everything. He was gone for like damn near an hour, which was really unusual. He gets back to the house. He's got the pizza and he's like, dude, he's like, I'm never getting pizza from that place again. He's like, that was the worst fucking experience of my life. Like, I am scared. I am shaking. And he's like looking out the windows. And I'm like, what's going on? I'm like, Britton, tell me what happened to you? Like, what's going on? And he's like, dude, he's like, because I was walking up the street. Like, it's a straight shot. Like, the road he's on, it's a straight shot to where he's going. And he goes, I'm walking. And then all of a sudden, like, over my shoulder, like this tall white figure. He said he didn't really get a look at it. He said it looked like a tall white man and what like appeared to be like overalls. Just like a tall white man. And he looked over his shoulder, and we're kind of in a rural area. So to see someone in overalls around here is not like totally uncommon. He doesn't get a good look at him or anything. He's got like his headphones in. He's doing his own thing. He's just trying to get this pizza. And this guy follows him all the way, like starts kind of gaining on him a little bit. He said like he got so close to him, it felt like he was about to be right next to him at any moment. This dude, and Britton didn't know what to do. He's freaking out. He's like kind of getting nervous. Like, who's this tallest person? He goes into the store, makes it to the store. Goes in, and he says the guy just like looked at him from the window. Just like he said, like he was standing in line waiting to like check out with his pizza. And the guy who had followed him was just staring at him through the window as he was like waiting in line. And Britton's trying to like play it off like as if he doesn't notice it because he's fucking scared and he doesn't know what's going to happen. Anyway, white guy goes away. Britton walks out with the pizza. He looks around, does a quick scan. White guy's nowhere, and just like power jogs home. And he comes home and he tells me the story. And I hadn't spoken to him about what I had seen, which kind of sounded similar to what he was describing. And I was like, holy fucking shit balls.
Did he mention to one of the people at the pizzeria that
no,
he saw?
That's what I told him. He said he was talking about how like it was a really frightening situation. I said, why didn't like over the counter? Why didn't you do like some kind of badass move where you're like call 911,
like write it out on the receipt?
Help I'm being followed.
Slide it across the table. I'm being followed. Don't look. Go to the exit on the left.
And now this happened about 3 weeks ago, and this has been a year or two, right?
This was about 3 years ago. All of that happened.
So
yeah.
I'm at work, and it's about 5, 6 in the morning, and I go outside, sit on the bench, and this guy comes up and talks to me, and he comes into town every once in a while and does he's like writes novels and stuff. He does like plays and everything. And he starts telling me, he's like, have you ever seen anything creepy in this town? I'm like, no, my friend has, and all this. And he goes to explain how on that street, it's a little bit far. It's not the same street as you're talking about, but it's just down the road.
Mm-hmm.
And he explained that Slim character completely. And
can you fill us like what's the Slim character? Like who is he?
Right. And
can you tell me
what?
What he said?
No, he asked if I had ever seen anything because him and a few other of his friends have in separate occasions seen the way he explained the character is just how you explained it.
Well, I'm just wanting to know, like,
I was like, oh
who
gosh,
he is. Like,
too,
what's the Slim? Like, where did he come from? Like, what's the origin story? Like, does there anyone know anything?
I just think it's weird that all these people have the same character description on totally different occasions and have no connection to any of it.
And that is when I start to say coincidence, coincidence,
yeah.
And then you start saying coincidence?
Right.
The thing that's really crazy is usually I doubt people who see these things, but then Dylan had a first-hand experience with it.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things where you have a story like that like, you're not lying. Like, you're not trying to fabricate any of the details of the story. Like, what you saw is what you saw, and like that's the easiest way you can put it. And a lot of people, you tell them these stories, and people are instantly like, "Bullshit, he's fucking lying," and you just got to be like, "Oh shit, I'm not."
It's almost like you have a burden that you can't.
Yeah, it's like frustrating.
Yeah.
You're like, I just wish that there was a way to be like, I am not lying. This happened. Swear to G.
And that's the thing, as once again saying, is that there are so many moneymaker or just telling it for the fun or the shock value to get a rise out of people, that there's a lot of just obvious
now after that experience walking alone at night. Do you think of seeing this?
I'm gonna be honest with you. Not really. Okay, so here's the thing.
No, we were on the golf cart driving around one time. And I
We-
was like, Slim, if you're out here, come and get us. And Dylan's like, will you stop that? Will you stop?
Okay, I play it safe. I'm a very safe. I don't go out of the boundaries any. Even though I don't necessarily think or believe in a spiritual realm, I still believe that there should be no attempts to contact one on the off chance that they are real. You know what I mean? Like my whole thing is like I don't want to
It's
do.
not a good thing to gamble
I don't want.
with.
I don't want everyone. I've heard so many people say, "Don't
You
touch a
are
Ouija board."
I like to call that type of personality the I don't believe it because it scares me shitless.
Exactly. No, you nailed it on the head. That's exactly what it is. See, the thing is people always. I've heard people talk about I've done Ouija boards and the Ouija board moved and this, and people say, "Don't touch Ouija boards. Ouija boards are evil. Don't do them."
So you want to hear an actual, completely interesting, different version of that, a Ouija board?
A good experience. Ouija
No,
board?
not actually a good experience. A completely way that it could work that is not spiritual.
Okay.
When you put your hand on something, keep it still.
Yes.
You're gonna always move a little, and thus, if you have 3 people doing
Yeah.
that, you're going to be moving.
Right.
And there's usually that one friend who
Mhm.
wants to mess everything up.
Yeah.
And it's not
Yeah.
necessarily somebody purposely trying to. It's just if you have 3 or 4 people trying to keep their finger
Right.
still and it's moving, then it looks like it's doing it
I
naturally.
have to see that thing move without anyone touching
Exactly.
it.
Yeah.
Like that's when I'll start to be like, maybe we shouldn't. You know.
It's also like a mental thing. You don't even realize sometimes. Like, 'cause,
Unconscious.
it's spelling out words.
You're-
so
well,
it's
you're-
kind of like once you see a Y and an E,
It also-
you don't even know it, but
it's
your
on the-
finger starts going to that S.
It also plays into like that whole power of suggestion thing
Yeah.
to where it's like you're going to ask a question, you've got yes and no across the board. Like obviously someone's going to have some kind of muscle memory where like if they ask a question, someone's going to have some kind of weird psychological muscle memory thing where they're going to push it to be more obligated to like actually have a conversation because that's what your brain's anticipating. So your body's just delivering on what your brain's already expecting.
I think I still do think that if you are doing a Ouija board in the wrong intention and purposely doing incantations or summoning something,
It's made by Hasbro, man.
I know.
They're
I know,
such a
but
joke. That's the thing. How can they be so evil?
The thing is
There are
that
homemade ones,
Hasbro took the concept from an older
Yeah.
concept.
Yeah. I mean,
It
this thing's
was-
been around since the 1800s. so.
I mean, the thing
Yeah,
is that, and also I will say, was it the inventor of the Ouija board got knocked off a building?
I have not heard.
I would need to find that again. I don't quote me on that one yet. I'll find source on that one later.
I've talked to. There's a lady that where in my previous apartment complex that I was living in. There was a lady who owned a Ouija board and said that she actively, like regularly by herself, gets on the Ouija board and moves it around to like talk to ghosts. Like, you know, it's like dream. It's like
Like a search engine. She just kind of uses
yeah,
it.
she just kind of
Ghost engine. It's like
And
it's Google with ghosts.
It's good.
She-
Yeah.
she's
It's good.
it's
You don't even need an Alexa in your house.
Hey-
Just get a Ouija board.
dear hey spirits, how heavy is a African swallow pigeon? But anyway, yeah, they just seem so hokey.
Mhm.
I think we all know what paranormal is, but I'm curious what the actual dictionary definition of paranormal.
Mhm. And I actually did look that up. The Merriam-Webster Dictionary of Paranormal is simply not scientifically explainable.
Okay, so could we include aliens, Sasquatch? Is that paranormal?
I'm technically by that concept, but I mean,
When you hear paranormal, you
you
think
normally
ghosts.
think
Yeah.
energy or ghosts.
Ghosts, yeah.
Can we just, for the sake of, since that all
Yeah.
is like basically
how about-
paranormal?
And that sounds like a topic for another night. In all honesty.
Yeah, we can
Do
do-
you have personal experiences relating to that?
I've got more to say about aliens.
You know,
than
in
Yeah.
fact, I think the
I don't
next
have any
episode should be
personal
aliens.
experiences
Aliens,
with
yeah.
Bigfoot, no.
Stay tuned next
But,
week when the boys
aliens,
tune back
I
in to
love-
talk about
I love
aliens.
aliens, so
Okay.
we could go into that.
So the next one I really had mostly actually related to and remember would be a situation with a doppelganger, which is the concept of a ghost that copies someone. Or I think there's a lot more myth or lore surrounding it, but
Is that what a doppelganger is?
it's basically
I thought it was like when someone else out there is like your almost.
Would
like a
you?
twin.
Would you?
well, the reason why you say that is because it's somebody. The original meaning of a doppelganger is somebody who is exactly like you, like kind of a ghost.
It's a
I
spirit
see
that
what you mean.
intimidates or impersonates someone you know.
Mhm.
Would you also call that in like old Jewish kind of traditions? They call something like that, like a debuk.
I think that's would be another one. I'm not as familiar with that one though.
It's kind of like where
thing is
a
that-
spirit comes back as like somebody, like someone's uncle or someone that they knew, and they're like, and what's crazy is they don't realize, like debuks traditionally don't realize that they're dead. So like, you know, a family will be sitting around the fire or, you know, whatever it was that they would do, and like all of a sudden like a dead relative would just walk through the door and be like, hey guys, like, sorry I'm late. And they'd be like, what the heck? Like, what are you doing? Like, you're supposed to be dead. And they're like, what are you talking about? I'm not supposed to be dead. And then like you have to like convince this ghost that he's dead before like he can go away and like be free.
That brings up an interesting point, because in a lot of films, there is the idea that a ghost is just there because they need to resolve an issue and then move forward.
Yeah, I'm not necessarily believing in that. I do believe that would be a reason why a ghost could stay behind, but I believe there's a lot more deeper reasons that I think if somebody was very attached to life and did not want to die would be another reason why a ghost would stay behind.
Yeah.
So, but going back to a story, this one was more relating to me because the doppelganger doppeled me. So, when I was, I was probably 6, 8, 7, I don't know. I was a little kid. So, my brother's girlfriend. So here's the thing. We were all at that age frame as kids playing the game of, oh, it's a haunted house. Let's scare each other around the corners. So we just would hide behind the corners everywhere and scare each other when somebody would walk around the corner. Okay. So I walked in the back room and my brother's girlfriend said, oh, I'm going to scare him. And so she hid on the corner of the doorway. So the way that house worked was the back room was literally, there was a little itty bitty hallway going into another room and the back room. There was no way to get out of that back room. I went into the back room for some reason, and she was like, oh, I'm going to scare him when he comes out. So she's just hiding there, waiting. And I walked up behind her, just seeing her crouched by the door and say, what are you doing? And she jumps out of her skin. And she swore that she saw somebody walk into the back room. And I believe there was another experience where somebody swore they saw me doing something, walking through the house, and then saw me walk by at another time as well.
But it wasn't you that was walking by.
No, it was not me.
That is...
Wow.
That's gotta be rare, though, right?
Okay.
I'm really not sure, but the thing is that after that, and both actually I believe Indian and Catholicism, they would use sage to cleanse spaces, and we did that a lot on that house. You just light the sage and you'd smudge the house, and the whole house would be filled with smoke.
So all of these stories that you're telling us are all coming from the same house.
That is correct.
Now, why? Do you know? Do you know the history of it?
There really is not in my mind necessarily a history of that house.
Like, you don't know who lived there before?
No, actually, I don't. I believe it was an old settlement house. The renter that rented it to us, I believe, inherited it and from her relatives.
Okay.
It was an older house, and I think it probably had a bit more history. I never really looked into it. I never was really interested into looking more into it. But I really can't say anything in particular. If something happened there, I'm not sure. There could have been very bad things that happened there at some point in its history, but I have no way to know about it.
It could also be just the property.
And that is
not
true,
just
too.
the house, like it could be like the land.
Yeah.
the house was on.
And that's the thing about me is I've always thought if I'm going to live in a house, because like you said, I'm just scared shitless of ever seeing something. That's what I believe. Like, I don't know if I believe in it or not. I'm just scared.
You just don't want to see it just in case.
I do not want to move in a house unless, you know what I mean? Like, if it's really old. Like, that's the biggest worry.
Because
I don't even care what the house looks like.
My personal belief is not necessarily an old house.
Yeah,
it's going to be
the
haunted.
Land. It's like the land.
More so the land
and
what
that
house is.
Because I always think of the house, but Dylan has a good point. It's like more of the land itself.
Yeah.
Bringing up on that point, there's a building in the town we grew up in, that they stored bodies after a tornado
Yeah.
Yes.
a long time ago.
Yeah.
And people to this day will not go in the basement of that building. They're
Yeah.
terrified.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It is kind of.
It's very scary.
So
I used to get really bad vibes just walking by that place.
yeah, I
Like-
actually don't know where that place is. I'll have to hear about
It's
that
the
later.
gym.
Oh,
The gym.
I never thought about that.
It was a basketball gym.
The older gym.
The older
Okay.
gym. Yeah.
I could probably go a couple more stories if you guys want me to.
I do want
Because
to point out.
You
I
have
did-
quite a bit of notes. here.
I did write
So-
down some notes because I actually
You-
went and asked my family members, "Hey, which ones do you remember?"
Not only do you have notes, though, you have a photo or a
Mhm.
drawing.
I've
of
been looking at this.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Like-
would you describe that to the audience?
So, oh geez, how
Your
would you?
brother drew this.
My brother drew this.
I want to put this
So,
up so
let-
everyone can see
Let
it.
me go ahead and start over again from the beginning. One section of the property was a little gully. It was a little enclosure downhill going into like basically where the forest and line began in the gully area of that forest.
Okay.
It was freaky there. For some reason, it was just so weird. It was just you did not go over there. For example, one time my mom was weed whacking and she just could not go down. She had to she went to the house and got my brother and had him go and watch her, have her watch her do the rest of that gully, and then she just left it there. She didn't care about taking care of that little section of the gully anymore because it was so.
I gotta be honest.
freaky
This
there.
sounds miserable.
Mhm.
Like living there.
It
You
makes
know,
me think of the cliche.
The thing is, I will be honest. My family had went bankrupt at the time, and it was the only option we had to live at that
Yeah,
time.
yeah.
That was where we lived. We
Right.
didn't have anywhere else to go.
Right.
Sorry. In every horror movie you see that they move in the house, it's haunted,
Yeah.
and then they never leave.
Yeah, I know.
Why don't they leave?
I know. Well, we did leave, and I am so happy. So going on more so about that is that same section of the gully. My brother was walking by there one time, and he saw this thing looking up at him. And we've seen things like this several times, and we kind of related to calling them black little monkeys. Like they would be slithering around, and like they didn't necessarily. They were like shadows.
A slithering monkey.
Like my
Wizard
okay.
of Oz.
Exactly, little monkeys. So but the face of this one was just black fur and then this white face.
Okay.
You know what that looks like? It looks like the thing from Spirited Away.
I was gonna say
Yeah.
something.
You would say that. That's
looks-
actually interesting.
You sure he
Um,
wasn't just watching that at the time? Or?
Well, the thing
Heavily
is that
influenced by
you-
Spirited Away.
I don't think you felt absolutely terrified by those things looking at you,
Yeah.
but it is
doesn't-
similar to and what he's referring to in the movie Spirited Away is a thing called No Face, which is a monster in the movie.
That's what
Yeah.
Dylan saw them.
Mhm. So
Yeah.
It was called No Face.
so which is interesting because No Face wear a mask, which is kind of reminds me of the drawing. But when I
Yeah.
told my brother, so hey, yeah, what did you see there? He went and drew this. He still had this image of this thing that was looking at him in his mind. My dad, by the way, is very like, yeah, he believes in this stuff, but he doesn't really care about it. He doesn't react to it. He said he saw one of these things climb up a light post and just get to the top and stare at him. I don't think I remember my dad ever being shaken before. He was just like, what the fuck?
Yeah, if I saw see, it doesn't look that scary like the drawing, but if I saw it climb up something and be
Yeah.
looking at me,
Mhm.
then I
Just stare at you.
A similar thing with the same concept of one of these things was that my mother went to pay the rent at the rent lady's house, which was pretty much up the roadway.
okay.
She said she swore something was following her back. And it looked kind of like this black slithering thing. So it started going down the road when she was driving back home. She started going down the road after her. And when she got home, this same roadway, car, little bit of roadway, house, she backed back out and backed in so the driver's side was closer to the front door and right into the house.
Josh, I'm curious. So, how many people are in your family that you grew up with?
2 sisters, 1 brother, and my mom and dad.
Okay.
My dad normally worked away during that time.
Right.
He
And
actually
they
a
were
lot of
all
time worked in
believers
Florida.
in the experiences.
Mhm.
Okay. And they all had a personal experience themselves.
Yes, that would be correct. They all had different relating experiences and things
Okay.
like that. One of my sisters had dreams of no one else being in the world.
Right.
And she would just wake up and
Hmm.
the sky was red,
Mm-hmm.
and she felt like nobody else was in the world. And also, I would like to say one more thing relating to the mirror world, which would be
Yes.
the concept of my mom one time, and I'm not joking, woke up screaming, help me, it's coming to get me. And she was trying to get out of her door, and her hand was going on the wrong side of the door, where the doorknob wasn't, but would have been in the mirror world. And my brother and sister were going to the doorway, and she's like, "It's fine. It was just a dream. I'm okay." And they're just like, so they didn't
my
sleep that
God.
night.
That is very terrifying.
Also,
wow.
we're not relating to this is actually a different gully. This was a gully that used to be a roadway, and it used to connect to a roadway on the other side, but eventually just fell into disrepair and turned into a gully. Well, actually, what happened was the dogs were growling out the window, and she looked outside the window, and she saw a guy walking up to that gully. And she was just like, "Oh my God, what the fuck is happening? Who's here? Oh my God." And she realizes he's wearing a t-shirt. It's winter. And then he proceeds to walk over the gully where there's no roadway anymore.
Oh man. Okay, so okay, let's go. Can we talk about like the whole evidence aspect of like paranormal events? Like, because
Please.
there's a lot of footage online of accounts, so many videos, EVP recordings. Or if you guys are familiar with what EVPs are, I've seen just like maybe 2 or 3 videos that I watched that I was like, okay, this is kind of weird. Like, have you guys seen the one of the cop car chasing, like, it's like a police car, and it was like a dashboard cam, and they were chasing this car that was like going like 98 down like a freeway, and the car pulls off like into a field and starts driving into the field, and the cop like follows him into the field and immediately like slams on his brakes because like there's a giant fence in the way. And this car had somehow gotten past the fence, and you could see like what looked like headlights, like driving away into the night sky. And even like you can hear the cop in the car being like, "Holy shit!"
The one that always gets me is the video, the viral video that went around with the girl that was in the elevator.
The
And they found
Lisa
her.
Lane.
Yeah, the Lisa Lane video.
What's no? But what's her actual name though?
I have no clue. But they found her in a what was it?
They found her in the water tank.
The water tank
of this hotel.
But there's like no indication of how she got in there. Like no.
Yeah, if you guys want to
It's like
see
almost impossible to get in there, you know?
It's and they have this weird surveillance footage of her like behaving weirdly, like in an elevator, like just a couple hours before she was reportedly like dead. Like because in the biopsy they found that there was no struggle. She put herself in the water tank. Like she allegedly crawled up this water tank, which there's like no way to like get up there easily. So they're like not necessarily understanding how she got there in the first place. The door like that you go through to get to the rooftop is like locked all the time. So they're not sure how she got in through there.
And the video itself, she's acting. I mean, she looks like she's on something.
I mean, she looks like she's drugged out.
And they did found
How
nothing
old was
in
this
her.
person?
Like 22.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not-
She was a
probably under
college
20.
student. She was a college student from Toronto, and she was in Los Angeles on some kind of college trip type.
Oh,
deal.
and that hotel that she was at was actually a place where a serial killer.
Yeah, there
murdered
was
a lot of
I
victims.
can't
Oh
remember.
my God.
I can't remember the serial killer's name. Which one it was? He was the weird one, the real Satanist one, Who,
There's so
like,
many.
who like
There's so many.
was yelling "Hail Satan" like in court,
Oh my
like for his
God.
Was
testimonies.
this Richard Ramirez?
Richard Ramirez.
Mhm.
Richard Ramirez was apparently living there at the time that he was on his murder spree in Los Angeles.
Oh my God.
So people theorize that like the ghost of Richard Ramirez like got into her like crazy things, but in reality what they've just recently figured out is the surveillance footage that they have of her like acting weird like in the elevator was tampered with. So they think there was someone else like goofing around that elevator with her, because she's acting as if like she's with someone, like she's looking around
Yeah.
for someone.
Mm.
And
like,
she's talking.
She's like talking to someone.
But also, it looks like she's talking to herself.
Yeah,
Really,
and
that's
there's,
really
like-
what it looks like.
There's
She's
like a
talking to
cut in the video. It's almost as if like they cut someone out of the surveillance footage and just left the bits that she was only in frame for. Like, because if you look on the time, like they just figured out like on the time. Also, the video's like sped up, like ever so slightly. A lot of weird tampering with the surveillance video, but anyway, nonetheless, it's still a fascinating, bizarre mystery of like
that they really once again don't really know what happened. Is it coincidence or is it something paranormal?
I mean, it's just one of those like so mysteriously weird things you don't know. Like,
you know what always gets me about watching these things and everything? It's like, what was that like? Like, well, you know what I mean? It's that's what gets me. It's not like what happened. It's what was that experience like for that person?
What was going through their mind
in
that moment?
Oh my God. You know,
What
that's
were
what
they
gets
doing?
me. That's what gets me.
And this girl, like, she wasn't on drugs. Her biopsy came back clean that she wasn't drunk on drugs. She had a few prescription drugs in her that she needed. They were like beta blockers or something, like nothing heavy duty, like nothing psychoactive. Yeah, that's so. Do you have
anything else?
Let's see. Evidence that might? Is there anything?
I mean, I'm
not putting you on the spot.
No, I perfectly understand. As I said before, it's believable to be skeptical, and the thing is I really don't. I mean, that is really the thing about it. Same with your story, the Slim. You don't necessarily have evidence.
You're not expecting
exactly,
especially like when something happens. You're not expecting to be ready to.
You're not expecting to have a camera out, and that's the reason why paranormal research, where they go into houses and record things happening, is kind of like, oh, this is so cool and stuff.
Right.
And sometimes it's cool, but otherwise, sometimes it's just like, what? What are you doing?
You guys, well, I'm not going to go there because we're talking about aliens next time, and I almost told an alien story. I'll save it for the next podcast.
You know, going back to my house, like I said, I've never had any experiences, but both my parents have. And my dad has always seen this kid walking around. One time he came up to the back door, and they thought it was one of my friends. You know, it's just like weird stuff, and like the kid would disappear, but the kid be at the end of the bed. My mom, her best friend, died shortly after she saw this, but saw her in the kitchen. She asked her to go away. Never seen her again. My friend Jordan, he was on our one podcast. He went to the bathroom and the door slammed on him. You know, just weird stuff. But me, no, nothing. You know, and it's kind of frustrating because that's all I want.
Yeah.
For some reason, I want that because it's a way of being like, it's a closure for me.
Being able to say, oh yeah, no, I do believe it.
Yeah,
I'd say your experiences with sleeping paralysis would count as a paranormal.
No matter how much
I don't think
I trust Dylan or Josh, I don't have I won't believe till I personally have the experience.
Right. And you've never had a personal experience.
No. Right. I've been in places that I could feel a vibe that might be categorized as unusual, but it has never been anything visually.
Okay. Fair enough. And like I said, with the little bit of experience I have, or you know, just what I know about it still leaves me feeling skeptical in the sense of where I just feel like my mind's playing tricks on me. Like there's such an unreal element to like these kinds of experiences that it's hard to explain. But whenever you see something that like is unusual, or I guess I don't know what you call it, something unexplainable, when you just see something, you experience this thing, this emotion, like
something paranormal,
this like weird emotion comes through your body where your brain, you almost have like this moment of like a disconnect where you're just like, I am not sure what just happened. Am I going insane? Did someone else see this? And so sometimes, like especially with the Slim thing, me and Shelby, I was convinced that like maybe I was going crazy because it was like my mind had never seen what I was seeing in front of me. So like I had this whole thing where it just threw me off, where I was like, what even am I looking at right now? Like my brain couldn't process it. And it's still to this day, like kind of gives me a headache thinking about it because it's hard to talk about.
Sorry, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. One thing with the paranormal experiences, especially ghosts, that I feel like we as a society are brought up on movies and TV shows that depict paranormal in a certain light, and they're very similar. And this is the same as aliens. That we think of the Hollywood, like, big-headed green alien,
Yeah.
and an alien could be any living thing from another place.
Oh, it could be like a speck of.
It could be single-celled
dust.
organisms,
Yeah.
anything. So we
Could be a
shouldn't
rock.
think of paranormal as that white sheeted ghost of like the old,
Exactly.
old Hollywood.
And that's really is interesting and a good point, because the thing is that a lot of things that I felt and experienced myself have never really been the white sheeted ghost, or just in Hollywood things like that, where it's just like,
What if, I mean, like he was just saying, what if it just looks like us? Like, what if you're, let's say you're in Walmart.
Mhm.
What stops a ghost from walking?
And that's
and you have no clue.
literally the whole thing that happened with the doppelganger, really. And just,
People
just
of
this
Walmart.
me. Exactly. I mean, I there's some pretty sketchy things that go on at Walmart.
like 3 a.m, I'm not convinced any of those people in there are real.
Yeah. Why would anybody be in Walmart at 3 a.m?
I go in there and I
Not
say,
even yourself.
wow, my mind's playing some tricks on me in here.
Yeah.
That is not a baby just
One-
sitting in the produce aisle by itself. Just by itself. They put it in the cooler, so I don't know.
There's a podcast right there, Walmart.
Yeah.
Oh, I would love to do a Walmart episode. Oh, golly.
All right, I have one other thing I'd like to bring up, and it reminds me because it's interesting because of the coincidence concept of, okay, this happened, doesn't mean it was paranormal. That would be the time the chimney collapsed on us, and it almost killed us because we had no idea we were being carbon monoxide poisoned. So it was
That
getting.
is my biggest fear.
Yeah, it was terrible. Like the guy came in with a reader, and it was literally off the number. And we were lucky. We got out in time. So
I have a similar story of what you're saying. I have an irrational fear of dying from carbon monoxide poisoning.
I do too.
Because it's undetectable.
I
Yeah,
believe
kinda.
that's perfectly rational.
Yeah.
Every time I get drowsy, my mind instantly goes to,
Yeah.
oh my god, the carbon monoxide's making me sleepy. This is it.
I had to go out and buy a little, carbon monoxide detector.
I need to. I don't have one currently.
I bought one where it plugs into an outlet.
Yeah, that's
like so nice.
I know.
You just have it down there.
I used to have
it's
one,
good
but
to go,
I used to have one, but it broke. Like it just doesn't work. Anyway,
Yeah.
But
because my grandma used to tell me this story, and my grandma lives in a very old house, and I wouldn't go as far as to say that it's a haunted house, but there was a weird period in time that my father and his his brothers and sisters and my grandma and grandfather had a weird experience with a guy that they called Butch. There's a man who lived in the house. His name was Butch, and he died from carbon monoxide poisoning. He had left his gas stove on all night, and so it just spewed gas throughout the whole house, and eventually caught up to him, and there was more gas than oxygen in the house. The dude suffocated in his sleep. That's how they got the house so cheap. No, so they used to always tell us stories about how, sometimes, someone would wake up at, 3 in the morning to, go to the bathroom, and, you kind of have to go through the kitchen to get to the bathroom, and, the gas would be, the stove would be, turned on with the gas spewing out, and they'd always, joke and be like, Butch, it was him. But then my uncle used to always tell this story about how, he was home alone. There was no one else in the house. He had the whole house for, a weekend, some family trip he couldn't make. And he had to get up at, 4 in the morning to go open up. He worked at, McDonald's or something, some fast food place. I can't remember the specifics. But he was working the first shift, and he said someone came into the room and shook him awake. Someone comes in and says, Doug, wake up. You gotta go, you gotta get up. And my Uncle Doug said he was just half asleep, just yeah, totally, I'm fine, whatever. Gets up, was rubbing his eyes, gets up, goes, takes a shower, gets his work uniform on. And he says when he walks back into his room from coming back from the bathroom, the ceiling above his bed, where his pillow was, had collapsed. And would have fallen on his face, if he hadn't gotten up. And then he said he saw that the ceiling had collapsed onto his bed. His first thought was, who woke me up? No one's in this fucking house.
Oh, wow.
He had an angel looking out for him.
Right, and so he's always like, he always jokes and is like, yeah, thanks, Butch. Like, he thinks it was Butch. So it's like, it's kind of conflicting. Butch, I guess, tries to kill them, but then
And save them.
he is be damned if they're going to be late for work.
I believe one of the concepts of paranormal and necessarily types of ghost spiritual energy is that you can be someone and die, and then necessarily that energy that was you is there. So when that energy is there, the thing is that it's just it kind of doesn't have any form type of concept.
Right.
Thus, it will pick up any other energy.
Right.
Thus, a person which is why you'll hear people like, oh yeah, they're great people in life, and why are they haunting their family members?
Yeah.
Because they picked up other energies in that concept.
Butch has
life.
Butch has no relation to my family at all. He was just the guy who lived in the house that they lived in after he passed away.
That's going about that chimney.
Yeah.
Yes.
Coincidence? Well, yeah, okay, fine. The house tried to kill us, whatever, or just a coincidence. Happened again to the next owners that moved in.
Really?
Chimney collapsed in, and they almost died of carbon poisoning.
You're kidding.
No. So that was interesting. I will end my story on this house of the people that moved in and lived thereafter had a priest come and exorcise the place, and they did say that it did improve the place greatly, because when we had moved out, my neighbor, who I'm still decently friends with, he said that the new neighbors came in up to him one time, said, does this house kind of seem haunted?
Oh, so them themselves.
Oh, so they even
Without
knew.
even knowing?
They didn't. We never told them. We never had any. I've never even met them before, but they believe that they was haunted.
You guys sold this house to...
We didn't. It was just rented.
Oh, okay. So you just moved out.
So we just moved out.
Wow. I mean, that literally is like the part with the chimney you're talking about here. That's really freaky. Okay.
That's most. I mean, that's a lot of the main pieces about the walking. I mean, most of the stuff has been. I have actually said. I mean, it's mainly things like that happened repeatedly, though.
Okay.
Like seeing those black things, or knocking on the door and nobody being there. You're out in the middle of nowhere. It's not somebody just coming up randomly and knocking on your door.
Yeah, so this house is located like in the middle of nowhere.
Pretty much. I mean, it's pretty off the road to find it.
We're going to end on that. Okay. Anything closing? Anybody want to say anything?
I will say, after this conversation we've had and hearing everyone's stories and opinions on the afterlife, it has made me, as always, vastly more curious about what
really is the thing with paranormal, because there is no answer.
It never ends.
And that's the reason why it's so pursued. Because
there's no answer.
I think paranormal research should more so be as a research thing, because the problem is when you're trying to study it as a science, there is no definite way to guarantee it as a science, so it really should just be observed. Right. From the concept of trying to figure out if it's real or not.
It's an energy, too. Because, like you were saying earlier on the podcast, but you know how my parents have seen stuff or heard stuff? When I'm there, I just feel weird. And I think a lot of it, you don't even have to see anything. There's just that feeling.
Well, mostly everybody hated going upstairs in the attic at the restaurant I used to work at, so...
I think we've covered everything that I wanted to talk about. I'm excited for the next podcast.
Yeah, aliens.
Tune in next week when we're talking about aliens.
But before we go, I want to ask you guys a question. Do you think you'll ever be a ghost? Would you choose to be? Would you want to be a ghost?
It's a choice? If it's a choice? No? Oh, man, that's a hard question. If you'd say, do I think...
What's the alternative?
I thought you were going to say, like, when I died, you think I'll be a ghost. My answer to that would have been, I hope. But now you ask me if there was a choice, like if I could be, like, a
ghost or just rest in peace.
I would be a ghost for sure.
Josh?
I would probably rest in peace no matter what it is.
Luke?
Dead.
Honestly, I'd rather be I'd be in peace. Because I don't want to be a ghost.
I feel like Dylan's going to be the ghost that's like, I knocked down your
Why don't you want to keep on, like, it would be like a second life. Like, why
let me just throw that out there. The things that people say that ghosts do, what a silly nature thing to do if you were a ghost. Why are you just knocking over bookshelves and like and just tossing someone's food off a table?
I
Like
would be that
little
ghost.
petty things.
I would fit into all the stereotypes.
The reason I wouldn't be a ghost is because you're alone. You're just alone, and that's probably why they do stuff like knock stuff over. Is because you can't go that
Attention.
long
They're
without.
pissed off.
You know, you want some type of connectivity.
Mhm.
But thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed this episode on Paranormal. We're signing off.